Story number 1. Echoes from the basement. The Florida sun blazed high in the sky as we pulled up to our new home on Cedar Lane. I'm Mark Thompson, and moving to a new house with my wife, Lisa, and our 2 children, Emma and Jake, was supposed to mark the beginning of a fresh chapter in our lives. After months of searching, we found the perfect place. A charming, albeit slightly worn, 2-story house nestled in a quiet neighborhood of Tallahassee. Little did we know, the house held secrets that would soon turn our dream into a nightmare. From the moment we stepped inside, the house exuded a sense of history. The hardwood floors creaked under our feet, and the large windows offered a picturesque view of the sprawling backyard. Lisa and I spent the first few days unpacking, arranging furniture, and exploring every nook and cranny of our new abode. The kids were thrilled with their new rooms, especially Emma, who had insisted on redecorating her bedroom with her favorite colors. However, as the sun set each evening, an unsettling feeling began to settle over us. It started subtly, a distant thud from the basement, barely audible over the sounds of the night. We dismissed it as the house settling or perhaps the old plumbing acting up. But soon, the noises became more frequent and distinct, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing from below, as if someone was pacing the basement floor. One chilly October night, as we sat in the living room watching a movie, the sound of footsteps grew louder. Lisa glanced nervously towards the staircase leading to the basement. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice tinged with fear. I nodded, trying to maintain a sense of calm. "Probably just the house settling," I replied, though my voice lacked conviction. The footsteps continued, rhythmic and deliberate, moving closer to the staircase. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness as the power went out, leaving us in pitch-black silence. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my flashlight, finally managing to flick it on. The beam of light revealed an empty basement, the door to which was firmly closed. "We should check it out," I suggested, my heart pounding in my chest. Lisa hesitated but agreed, sensing that whatever was happening wasn't normal. We descended the narrow staircase, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, boxes, and forgotten memorabilia. As we reached the bottom, the flashlight beam landed on a large, ornate mirror leaning against the far wall. The surface was dusty, reflecting a distorted image of the room. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of our own breathing. I approached the mirror, curiosity overcoming my fear. As I wiped away the dust, the room in the mirror seemed to shimmer and shift. For a moment, I saw a figure standing behind us, a man in old-fashioned attire, his eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure raised his hand, pointing towards a corner of the basement where a small, antique box lay on the floor. "Help us," he whispered, his voice echoing unnaturally in the confined space. Lisa grabbed my arm, her face pale. "Mark, we need to leave," she insisted, pulling me back. But before we could move, a cold breeze swept through the basement, extinguishing the flashlight and plunging us into darkness once more. The oppressive atmosphere pressed down on us, making it difficult to breathe. The sound of heavy breathing filled the room, growing louder and more intense, as if someone or something was right beside us. Desperate to escape, we fumbled for the basement door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as the breathing intensified, accompanied by the faint sound of sobbing. In the darkness, we could make out the faint outline of the man from the mirror, his presence both menacing and tragic. Suddenly, the room was filled with the smell of burning wood and the crackling sound of flames. The basement seemed to transform before our eyes, the walls appearing charred and blackened, as if a fire had consumed the space. The man's figure flickered like a dying flame, his sorrowful eyes pleading for release. "We need to find out what happened here," I shouted over the chaos, trying to steady my voice. Lisa nodded, her fear giving way to determination. "Let's look for the box," she said, pointing towards the corner where the antique box still lay amidst the flames. As we approached, the flames seemed to recede, revealing the box intact despite the fiery transformation of the basement. I opened it cautiously, finding old photographs and a journal inside. The journal belonged to Richard Harris, the previous owner of the house, a renowned psychologist who had tragically died in a mysterious car accident 2 years prior to our move. The entries in the journal were fragmented, detailing Richard's descent into madness as he became obsessed with his patients' traumas. He wrote about experimenting with unconventional methods to help them confront their fears, pushing ethical boundaries in his quest for understanding. The final entries became erratic, filled with references to voices and shadows that haunted him, driving him to the brink of insanity. As I read aloud from the journal, the atmosphere in the basement began to change. The oppressive weight lifted slightly, the temperature warming, and the sound of heavy breathing faded into silence. It was as if acknowledging Richard's torment had begun to release his spirit from its eternal anguish. Suddenly, the mirror shimmered once more, and the man appeared, his expression now one of relief rather than sorrow. "Thank you," he whispered before fading into the ether, leaving us alone in the transformed basement. Breathing heavily, Laura and I knew it was time to leave. We ascended the stairs, the basement door now open, allowing fresh air to circulate. As we reached the top, the house settled into a peaceful stillness, the haunting presence finally at rest. In the days that followed, the strange noises ceased, and the house felt lighter, as if freed from a long-held burden. We decided to honor Richard's memory by donating some of his belongings to the local historical society, ensuring his story would not be forgotten. But the experience left a lingering mark on our family. The basement became a place of reflection, reminding us of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring impact of unresolved sorrow. We learned to appreciate the peace we had reclaimed, cherishing every moment of normalcy that now filled our home. Years later, as I sit in the quiet living room with my family, the memory of that harrowing night serves as a testament to our resilience and the power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. The house on Cedar Lane stands as a symbol of our journey, a place where we faced our fears and found peace amidst the shadows of the past. And sometimes, when the wind rustles through the trees and the moon casts a gentle glow on our windows, I catch a faint whisper, a reminder of Richard's spirit and the love that binds us together, transcending the boundaries of life and death. Story number 2. Shadows through the window. The first time I saw the house on Maple Drive, it stood solitary against the sprawling Michigan landscape, its silhouette a stark contrast against the golden hues of an early autumn sunset. I'm Tom Reynolds, and moving to a new home had always symbolized a fresh start for me and my wife, Sarah. After years of city living, the quiet suburb seemed like the perfect place to build our future together. From the moment we stepped inside, the house exuded a sense of history and charm. The hardwood floors creaked softly under our feet, and the large windows framed picturesque views of the surrounding woods. Sarah and I spent the first few days unpacking, exploring every room, and imagining the memories we would create here. It was everything we had hoped for, until the nights began. It started subtly, late one evening, as we sat in the living room sipping tea. Sarah mentioned seeing a shadow move past the window on the far side of the house. "It looked like a man," she said, her brow furrowed in concern. I glanced in the direction she pointed, but there was nothing there, just the swaying branches of an old oak tree caught in the evening breeze. "Probably just a trick of the light," I reassured her, trying to dismiss the unease settling over us. But that night, as I lay in bed, the memory of the shadow lingered, gnawing at the edges of my peace. Over the next few weeks, the occurrences became more frequent and unsettling. Each night, without fail, a shadowy figure would glide past the window, its presence unmistakable yet impossible to pinpoint. Sarah and I discussed it countless times, each conversation ending with more questions than answers. We couldn't find any logical explanation. No one was living nearby, and the area was known for its tranquility. Determined to understand what was happening, I decided to dig into the house's history. I visited the local library and scoured old newspaper archives, piecing together the story of the previous owner, Richard Harris. Richard had been a reclusive man, known in town for his eccentric behavior and solitary lifestyle. 5 years before we moved in, he had tragically died in a car accident on a deserted stretch of highway not far from our home. The circumstances were mysterious, no witnesses, no clear cause, just a lifeless body left at the roadside. As I delved deeper, I found unsettling accounts of Richard's isolation. Neighbors spoke of strange lights in his house at odd hours and rumors that he had been working on something secretive in the basement. There were whispers of experiments, of trying to bridge the gap between life and death, though nothing concrete had ever been confirmed. One chilly October night, the shadows seemed to grow bolder. Sarah and I were sitting in the kitchen when we heard a soft thud coming from upstairs. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I exchanged a nervous glance with Sarah. "Probably just the house settling," I muttered, though my voice lacked conviction. But as I reached for the light switch, the room plunged into darkness. The power had gone out, leaving us in pitch blackness save for the faint glow of the moon streaming through the windows. In that moment of silence, we heard it, a distinct, slow-breathing sound, heavy and deliberate, emanating from the hallway. "Sarah, stay calm," I whispered, grabbing a flashlight from the drawer. We cautiously made our way towards the sound, our footsteps echoing ominously on the hardwood floors. The breathing grew louder, closer, until we reached the end of the hallway and found ourselves standing before the master bedroom door. The door swung open on its own, revealing an empty room bathed in moonlight. But there was no one there. As we turned to leave, the breathing continued, now accompanied by a soft whisper, "Don't go near the window." Frozen in fear, we stared at each other, our minds racing to make sense of the haunting message. The shadows outside the window seemed to dance and twist, forming the faint outline of a man's figure before dissolving into the night air. We didn't speak, the weight of the encounter pressing down on us. The following day, we decided to consult a local historian, hoping to uncover more about Richard Harris and the house's dark past. The historian, a wizened man named Mr. Jenkins, revealed more unsettling details. Richard had been deeply interested in the paranormal, conducting seances and experiments aimed at contacting the dead. It was rumored that his obsession had driven him to the brink of madness, blurring the lines between reality and the supernatural. There have been other reports of strange occurrences in that house, Mr. Jenkins said, his voice low. People have spoken of apparitions, unexplained noises, and now, shadows moving on their own. It seems Richard Harris never truly left this place. Armed with this new information, Sarah and I felt a mix of fear and determination. We couldn't ignore the haunting any longer. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky and rain pelted the windows, we decided to confront whatever was lingering in our home. We gathered candles, old photographs of Richard, and the journal I had found during my research, a diary of sorts, filled with Richard's thoughts and experiments. We made our way upstairs, the air thick with tension. As we entered the master bedroom, the temperature dropped sharply, our breaths visible in the icy air. The room felt alive, pulsating with an unseen energy. We placed the candles around the room, their flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. Opening Richard's journal, I began to read aloud, hoping to appease whatever spirits were trapped within our home. "Tonight, I reach out to the beyond," I recited, my voice wavering. "Let the veil between worlds grow thin, and may the spirits find the peace they seek." As the final words left my lips, the room grew colder still, the candles burning brighter. The shadowy figure appeared once more at the window, his presence more defined than before. He stood silently, watching us with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through my very soul. "Find peace," the whisper echoed, the words laced with sorrow and longing. Suddenly, the candles extinguished themselves, plunging the room into darkness. The breathing ceased, replaced by an overwhelming silence that pressed down on us. The shadow faded, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as quickly as it had descended. Exhausted but hopeful, we knew that our efforts had made a difference. In the weeks that followed, the disturbances ceased. The shadows no longer moved on their own, and the nightly cries were replaced by a peaceful silence. The house felt lighter, the weight of the past lifted from its walls. Sarah and I breathed a collective sigh of relief, grateful to have restored harmony to our home. But the experience left an indelible mark on our family. We learned the importance of respecting the past and the restless spirits that lingered in forgotten places. The house on Maple Drive became more than just our home. It was a sanctuary where we honored the memories of those who had suffered, ensuring that their stories were never forgotten. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind rustles through the trees and the moon casts a soft glow on our windows, I catch a faint whisper on the breeze, a lingering echo of Richard's sorrowful plea. It serves as a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. We moved forward, stronger and more united, our bond forged in the face of the unknown. The house on Maple Drive stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the love that binds us, even in the darkest of times. And as the years pass, we cherish every peaceful night, grateful for the sanctuary we've created amidst the shadows of the past. Story number 3. Whispers beneath the floorboards. The crisp autumn air of Massachusetts had always carried a sense of nostalgia, reminding me of the countless stories whispered through the rustling leaves and the golden hues of falling foliage. When Laura and I found the house on Elm Street, it was love at first sight. This classic colonial architecture, sprawling porch, and the promise of a fresh start for our growing family made it the perfect choice. We moved in with our 2 children, Emily and Jack, eager to create new memories in our charming new home. The first few weeks were blissful. We painted rooms, unpacked boxes, and settled into a routine that felt both comforting and invigorating. The neighborhood was quiet, with friendly neighbors who greeted us warmly and children playing in the yards during the day. It was everything we had hoped for, a sanctuary away from the chaos of our previous lives. However, as the days grew shorter and the nights colder, subtle changes began to unsettle us. It started with the lights, sometimes flickering inexplicably or turning on and off without anyone touching the switches. At first, we dismissed it as the quirks of an old electrical system, but the occurrences became more frequent and harder to ignore. One chilly October evening, as we sat together in the living room, Emily pointed out that the lamp beside her bed had turned on by itself. Jack, ever the skeptic, laughed it off, teasing her about her overactive imagination. Laura and I exchanged uneasy glances, the seed of doubt taking root in our minds. That night, the disturbances escalated. As we lay in bed, a faint sound reached our ears, an irregular, shallow breathing coming from beneath the floorboards. At first, we thought it was the plumbing, a common source of strange noises in older homes. But as the nights progressed, the breathing grew louder and more distinct, resembling the shallow breaths of someone struggling to catch their breath. Determined to uncover the source of the sounds, I decided to investigate one evening. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of trepidation, I made my way downstairs to the basement. The stairs creaked under my weight, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was a vast, cluttered space filled with old furniture, boxes, and forgotten relics from the house's past. The faint sound of breathing seemed to emanate from a corner of the room, where the wooden floorboards appeared slightly warped. As I approached the area, the breathing became more pronounced, almost as if someone was right beside me. My heart pounded in my chest as I knelt down, shining my flashlight beneath the floorboards. To my horror, I saw nothing, no signs of movement, no shadows lurking in the darkness. Confused and unnerved, I stood up, the unexplained breathing fading as quickly as it had appeared. Back upstairs, I recounted my findings to Laura, who shared similar experiences. The feeling of being watched became more intense, as if unseen eyes were constantly observing our every move. Doors would slam shut on their own, and the temperature in certain rooms would drop suddenly, leaving us shivering in the middle of the night. Desperate for answers, we decided to delve into the house's history. Laura contacted the local historical society and spent hours poring over old records and newspaper archives. What we discovered was chilling. A series of tragic events that had unfolded in the very walls of our home. In the early 1900s, the house had belonged to Dr. Henry Caldwell, a respected psychologist known for his pioneering work in mental health. However, his reputation took a dark turn when several of his patients vanished without a trace. Rumors swirled about Dr. Caldwell's unconventional and extreme treatment methods, suggesting that he had crossed ethical boundaries in his quest to cure his patients. The final blow to his career came when a local newspaper published an exposé detailing the mysterious disappearances. Dr. Caldwell had abruptly left the house, and the cases remained unsolved, leaving the community to speculate about the true nature of his practices. Some believed he had been involved in occult rituals. Others thought he had inadvertently opened a gateway to something beyond our understanding. As we pieced together the puzzle, the strange occurrences in our home intensified. The breathing sounds became a nightly torment, echoing through the house with a persistent, haunting rhythm. One particularly stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky, we heard a desperate plea carried by the wind, soft, sorrowful words that sent chills down our spines. Help us! Determined to confront whatever haunted our home, Laura and I decided to seek professional help. We contacted a renowned paranormal investigator, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, who had a reputation for uncovering the truth behind haunted houses. Upon arriving, she conducted a thorough examination of the property, setting up equipment to detect any supernatural presence. Dr. Hayes confirmed our suspicions. There was indeed a restless energy inhabiting the house, a lingering presence of those who had suffered and perished within its walls. She theorized that the spirits of Dr. Caldwell's missing patients were trapped in the house, unable to find peace after the dark experiments that had taken place. With Dr. Hayes's guidance, we embarked on a cleansing ritual to honor the spirits and help them move on. The process was arduous, requiring us to confront the dark history that had been buried within our home. We lit candles, recited prayers, and offered tokens of remembrance to the lost souls, hoping to soothe their restless spirits. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere in the house began to change. The oppressive weight lifted, and the strange noises became less frequent. The breathing sounds diminished, replaced by a serene silence that felt like a breath of fresh air. It seemed that our efforts were paying off, and the house was finally finding peace. However, just as we began to relax, a final, chilling whisper echoed through the rooms. "Stay away!" The temperature plummeted, and the shadows seemed to grow darker, more menacing. Laura and I exchanged worried glances, unsure if the spirits were fully appeased or if something more sinister was at play. Determined not to let fear consume us, we decided to investigate further. We discovered a hidden compartment beneath the master bedroom floor, where Dr. Caldwell had conducted his most secretive experiments. Inside, we found a collection of journals detailing his descent into madness, his obsession with unlocking the secrets of the human mind, and his twisted belief that he could transcend the boundaries of life and death through his work. The final entry was a disturbing account of his experiments, attempts to merge the living with the deceased, creating a bridge between worlds that ultimately led to chaos and tragedy. It became clear that Dr. Caldwell had inadvertently trapped the souls of his patients within the house, their anguish forever binding them to the physical realm. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Laura and I returned to Dr. Hayes, who explained that the only way to truly free the spirits was to destroy the remnants of Dr. Caldwell's experiments. We agreed, understanding that our home had become a battleground between the living and the dead. On a cold, moonless night, we gathered in the master bedroom, the antique mirror that had become the focal point of the hauntings standing ominously on the wall. Dr. Hayes led the ritual, guiding us through the process of severing the ties that bound the spirits to our home. As we chanted the final incantation, the mirror began to glow with an otherworldly light, the surface rippling as if alive. Suddenly, the room was filled with the anguished cries of the trapped souls, their sorrow echoing through the house. The mirror shattered, the shards reflecting the turmoil of the spirits as they were finally set free. The oppressive atmosphere lifted instantly, replaced by a peaceful stillness that settled over the house. Exhausted but relieved, we knew that the house was finally free of its dark past. The strange occurrences ceased, and the breathing sounds were no more, replaced by the sounds of our family's laughter and the comforting rhythm of daily life. We had confronted the darkness within our home and emerged stronger, our bond deepened by the shared experience. Years have passed since that harrowing ordeal, and our home remains a place of warmth and love, free from the shadows that once haunted its halls. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind rustles through the trees and the house settles into silence, I catch a faint whisper, a lingering echo of the spirits we helped set free, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the dead, and the enduring power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. Laura and I often reflect on the lessons we learned from our ordeal. We understand now that some places hold memories too painful to forget, and that the spirits of the past can linger, waiting for someone to acknowledge their suffering and offer them peace. Our experience taught us the importance of empathy, the strength of our family bond, and the resilience required to overcome the darkest of fears. As I sit by the fireplace on a quiet winter night, watching the flames dance and listening to the peaceful silence that envelopes our home, I am grateful for the journey we endured. The house on Elm Street is more than just our home. It is a testament to the enduring spirit of those who came before us and the love that binds us together, even in the face of the unknown. Story number 4. Reflections of the Forgotten. The moment we stepped into the old Victorian house on Elm Street in New York, a sense of anticipation mixed with unease settled over us. My wife, Laura, and I had been searching for the perfect home for months, craving a fresh start away from the chaos of the city. When we found the house, it seemed like destiny. The exterior was charming, with ornate woodwork and large, inviting windows that hinted at the beauty within. Despite its age and the layers of peeling paint, there was an undeniable allure that drew us in. A Michael Carter, and moving into a new home had always been a symbol of hope and new beginnings for our family. Laura and I had 2 children, Emily and Jake, who were equally excited about our new adventure. The first few weeks were blissful, unpacking boxes, rearranging furniture, and exploring every nook and cranny of our new abode. The house was spacious, with high ceilings and a layout that promised comfort and warmth during the long New York winters. One evening, after a long day of settling in, Laura suggested we spend some time decorating the master bedroom. As we moved furniture and hung pictures, she noticed an antique mirror tucked away in the corner of the room. It was beautifully crafted, with an intricate gold frame that had seen better days. "Let's hang this up," she said, placing it on the wall opposite our bed. As the days turned into weeks, we began to notice subtle changes in the house. The lights would flicker occasionally, and doors would open and close on their own. First, we dismissed these as the quirks of an old house settling, but the occurrences grew more frequent and unsettling. One chilly December night, as the wind howled outside, we heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. Emily and Jake clung to us, eyes wide with fear, while Laura and I exchanged worried glances. The disturbances culminated when we realized the antique mirror in the master bedroom was at the center of it all. Each time we looked into it, we felt a strange presence, an invisible weight pressing down on us. Shadows seemed to move just beyond the edge of our vision, and for brief moments, we caught glimpses of ghostly figures reflected behind us, even though no one else was in the room. One particularly stormy night, the house was plunged into darkness as the power went out. We lit candles to dispel the shadows, their flickering flames casting eerie patterns on the walls. As we huddled together in the living room, the antique mirror seemed to glow with an unnatural light. Laura, trying to rationalize the situation, suggested it might be a trick of the light or our imaginations running wild. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I decided to investigate, convincing Laura to join me in the master bedroom. As we approached the mirror, the temperature in the room dropped sharply, our breaths visible in the cold air. I reached out to touch the glass, feeling an inexplicable pull that stopped me short. The surface of the mirror rippled like water, distorting our reflections until they were unrecognizable. Suddenly, the faint image of a woman appeared behind us in the mirror. Her eyes were hollow, filled with sorrow and pain, and her mouth moved silently as if trying to communicate. We spun around, but the room was empty, no one was there. The woman's image in the mirror grew clearer, her expression pleading. "Help us," she seemed to say, her voice a mere whisper that resonated deep within our souls. Terrified, we stumbled back, the mirror's surface returning to normal. The oppressive atmosphere lifted momentarily, but the memory of her sorrowful gaze lingered. We decided to leave the house, convinced that something malevolent resided within its walls. Packing our belongings in a hurry, we drove away under the cover of darkness, the storm still raging outside. Weeks passed, and the nightmare didn't end. Even after leaving the house, we couldn't escape the haunting memories. Laura and I struggled to make sense of what we had experienced. Seeking answers from local historians and paranormal experts, we discovered that the house had a tragic history. Dr. Eleanor Whitaker, a renowned psychologist, had lived there in the early 1900s, known for her innovative but controversial methods. Dr. Whitaker had been obsessed with understanding the human psyche, pushing the boundaries of ethical treatment. Rumors swirled about her patients, stories of individuals who had vanished without a trace, their disappearances shrouded in mystery and fear. It was said that Dr. Whitaker had conducted extreme experiments in the basement, attempting to unlock the secrets of the mind through any means necessary. The antique mirror had once belonged to her, a tool she believed could reflect the deepest fears and traumas of her patients, providing insights into their subconscious. The house had been abandoned for decades, left to decay and become a repository of forgotten suffering. It seemed that the spirits of those who had endured Dr. Whitaker's treatments were still trapped within the walls, their anguish manifesting through the mirror's supernatural influence. The woman we had seen was likely one of those lost souls, forever seeking release from her eternal torment. Determined to free ourselves from the haunting memories, Laura and I sought closure by returning to the house, hoping to confront the spirits and lay them to rest. Armed with knowledge and a deep sense of empathy, we entered the abandoned house once more, the antique mirror beckoning us like a siren's call. As we approached the master bedroom, the air grew heavy with the weight of past sorrows. The mirror stood as a silent witness to the tragedies that had unfolded within these walls. We stood before it, holding hands, and began to speak words of compassion and understanding, acknowledging the pain and suffering of the lost souls. The temperature in the room dropped further, our breaths visible in the frigid air as the mirror's surface began to shimmer. The sorrowful figure of the woman reappeared, her eyes now filled with a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude and peace. The oppressive presence lifted, the shadows dissipating into the ether. The mirror returned to its normal state, our reflections once again showing only our peaceful selves. We felt a profound sense of relief and closure, knowing that we had honored the memories of those who had been trapped by tragedy and despair. Leaving the house for the final time, we felt lighter, The haunting memories finally laid to rest. The antique mirror, once a conduit of sorrow, now stood as a symbol of compassion and healing. This dark history transformed into a tale of redemption. Years later, we still think back to that terrifying period, grateful for the resilience that carried us through. The experience taught us the importance of empathy, the enduring impact of unresolved pain, and the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. Sometimes, when I pass by the old house on Elm Street, I can't help but feel a sense of reverence for the spirits we helped free, a silent acknowledgement of the lives forever intertwined with our own. And occasionally, when the wind rustles through the trees and the night is still, I catch a faint whisper on the breeze, a lingering reminder of the souls we encountered and the compassion that bridged the gap between sorrow and peace. Story number 5. Whispers behind closed doors. The moving truck finally pulled away, leaving me standing alone in front of the old farmhouse on Maple Avenue in Ohio. My wife, Laura, and our 2 kids, Emily and Jake, had been excited about this fresh start for months. The house, with its sprawling porch and charming facade, seemed like the perfect place to build new memories. Little did we know, it held secrets that would soon turn our dream into a living nightmare. I'm David Miller, and moving into a new home had always symbolized hope and new beginnings for our family. The first few weeks were blissful. We painted rooms, unpacked boxes, and settled into the rhythm of our new life. The kids enjoyed exploring their new bedrooms, while Laura and I took pride in making the house our own. But as autumn gave way to winter, subtle changes began to unsettle us. It started with the lights. Occasionally, a lamp in the hallway would flicker or turn on by itself. At first, we dismissed it as electrical issues, common in older homes. But then, things escalated. One chilly December night, as we all sat in the living room watching a movie, we heard the unmistakable sound of a door slamming shut upstairs. The entire family froze, hearts pounding. But when we looked around, no one was near the bedroom doors. Probably just the house settling, Laura suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. We tried to brush it off, but the unease lingered. A few nights later, the phenomenon repeated with increasing frequency. Doors would slam shut with no apparent cause. Even when we were all in the living room, the kids were terrified, whispering about ghosts and spirits lurking in the shadows. Laura and I exchanged worried glances, our skepticism waning as the occurrences became more frequent and intense. Determined to understand what was happening, I delved into the house's history. I contacted the local library and scoured old newspaper archives, piecing together the story of the previous owner, Richard Harris. Richard had been a reclusive man, known for his sudden and mysterious death in 2018. Official reports were sparse, citing a heart attack, but whispers in town suggested foul play or something far more sinister. One evening, as a heavy snowstorm raged outside, the disturbances reached a boiling point. We were all gathered in the living room, the power flickering intermittently, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the bedroom door slammed shut, followed by a chilling silence. Then, a soft, sorrowful whisper echoed through the room. "Stay away from the upstairs." We stared at each other in horror, the room growing colder with each passing second. Laura grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave," she urged, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. Desperate, I tried to force the door open, but it remained immovable. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with an oppressive presence. The lights flickered violently, and the temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the frigid air. Emily and Jake clung to us, trembling with fear as the house seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. In a moment of sheer terror, I remembered Richard Harris's story. He had been a man obsessed with controlling his environment, attempting to create the perfect home through any means necessary. Some speculated he dabbled in the occult, seeking to bind spirits to the house for his own twisted purposes. Could his experiments have backfired, trapping restless souls within these walls? Determined to protect my family, I reached for my phone, but there was no signal, just the blank screen mocking my desperation. The whispers turned into anguished cries, the sounds of a tortured soul begging for release. I knew I had to confront whatever haunted our home. "Richard, if you're here, show yourself," I called out, my voice breaking. The room seemed to respond, shadows coalescing into a dark figure standing at the foot of the stairs. His presence was oppressive, his eyes hollow with sorrow and rage. "You shouldn't have come here," the apparition intoned, his voice echoing through the room. "Leave now, before it's too late." Laura and I backed away, trying to find another way to escape, but the house seemed to shift around us, the walls closing in, trapping us in this nightmare. The figure advanced, his form becoming more defined, the sorrow in his eyes turning to anger. Desperate, I grabbed Laura's hand and pulled her towards the door. "We have to fight this," I shouted, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. I remembered reading about cleansing rituals and decided to use whatever knowledge I had to banish the spirit. "We need to break his hold on this place," I said, trying to steady my voice. Laura nodded, and together, we began to recite prayers and incantations from the journal I had found in the library archives. The room responded violently, the figure recoiling as the power of our words began to take effect. The whispers turned into screams, the house shaking with the intensity of the battle between us and the restless spirit. The figure dissipated into a cloud of dark smoke, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the house returned to its former state. The door finally swung open, and we stumbled out into the cold, the storm outside having subsided. Exhausted and shaken, we huddled together, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. We had faced the darkness that haunted our home and emerged victorious. But the scars remained. The house on Maple Avenue was no longer just a house. It was a place where the past lingered, its secrets etched into the very fabric of our lives. In the weeks that followed, the disturbances ceased, the house returning to its peaceful state. We made a conscious effort to honor the spirits that had been trapped, leaving offerings and maintaining a respectful distance from the upstairs rooms. The nightmares faded, replaced by a sense of calm that we hadn't felt since moving in. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the house settles into silence, I catch a faint echo of a child's cry, a lingering reminder of the battle we had fought and the spirits we had set free. It serves as a testament to the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of love and determination to overcome the darkest of fears. The house on Maple Avenue remains our home, a place of warmth and love, but we live with the knowledge that some places hold memories too painful to forget and spirits too restless to ignore. And as the years pass, we cherish every peaceful night, grateful for the sanctuary we've created amidst the shadows of the past. Story number 6. Echoes of the Past. The scorching Texas sun beat down on the gravel driveway as we pulled up to our new home, a sprawling Victorian-style house nestled in the quiet outskirts of Marfa. My wife, Laura, and our 2 children, Emily and Jack, stared in awe at the grand facade, its intricate woodwork and towering windows promising a life far removed from the cramped apartment we'd left behind in Austin. I'm David Thompson, and moving to this old house in 2023 was supposed to be the fresh start our family desperately needed. From the moment we stepped inside, the house exuded a sense of history and charm. The high ceilings, ornate moldings, and antique furnishings gave it a timeless elegance that made us feel like we had stepped into another era. Laura immediately set about unpacking the living room, while Emily and Jack explored their new bedrooms with the enthusiasm only children possess. I wandered through the halls, envisioning the memories we would create in this beautiful old house. The first few nights were peaceful, filled with the sounds of settling wood and the distant hum of the Texas night. However, as the days turned into weeks, subtle disturbances began to unsettle us. It started with the lights, sometimes turning on and off by themselves, flickering in a way that felt almost intentional. Laura dismissed it as electrical issues, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. One evening, as the family settled down for dinner, we heard the unmistakable sound of a child crying. It was soft at first, barely audible over the din of our conversation, but it grew louder, more persistent, emanating from upstairs. Laura and I exchanged uneasy glances, while Emily and Jack looked around, puzzled by the unfamiliar sound. Probably just a neighbor's kid, Laura suggested, trying to reassure everyone. But deep down, I felt a growing sense of unease. That night, as we lay in bed, the cries returned, louder and more desperate. Couldn't sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. I decided to investigate, convincing Laura to join me. We crept up the grand staircase, the wooden steps creaking under our weight. The crying grew louder as we approached the end of the hallway, where the doors to the bedrooms stood closed. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door to the master bedroom. The room was empty, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight streaming through the window. Laura stood beside me, her expression one of concern and confusion. "There's nothing here," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. We spent several minutes searching the room, finding nothing out of the ordinary. The crying persisted, however, echoing through the empty halls as we descended back to our bedroom. Exhausted and frustrated, we tried to brush off the experience, attributing it to our imaginations running wild after a long day of moving. But the phenomena escalated. Each night, the cries grew louder, more haunting, as if the spirit of a lost child was reaching out for help. Objects began to move on their own, chairs shifting positions, books falling off shelves, and the old grandfather clock chiming at odd hours. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in with every unexplained occurrence. One particularly cold December night, the situation reached a tipping point. The entire family had gathered in the living room for a cozy evening by the fire, hoping to dispel the lingering fears with warmth and laughter. But as the clock struck midnight, the atmosphere shifted. The room grew unnaturally cold, the fire flickering violently as shadows danced along the walls. Suddenly, the crying erupted from upstairs, piercing the silence like a knife. Before we could react, a voice, soft yet filled with sorrow, echoed through the room. "Don't come near the upstairs," it warned, the words sending chills down my spine. Laura grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the unsettling presence. "We need to leave," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. We hurriedly gathered the children, Emily and Jack wide-eyed with fear, and made our way towards the front door. But as we reached for the handle, the lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the house into darkness. The cries intensified, surrounding us with their mournful pleas, as unseen forces seemed to press down on us, making it difficult to breathe. In a panic, I grabbed Laura's hand and pulled her towards the window, forcing it open. The cold night air rushed in, and we stumbled out into the darkness, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we fled the house, the cries followed us, fading only when we reached the safety of our car. Breathless and shaken, we sped away from the house, the image of the sorrowful child etched into our minds. We didn't stop until the house was nothing more than a distant silhouette against the Texas skyline. That night, as we sat in the car, Laura placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We can't stay here anymore," she said, her voice firm despite the fear that lingered in her eyes. "There's something wrong with this place." The next morning, we contacted the previous owners and the local authorities, seeking answers about the house's dark history. What we discovered was chilling. The house had once belonged to Dr. Samuel Caldwell, a renowned psychologist known for his groundbreaking but controversial methods. Dr. Caldwell had operated his practice within these walls, treating patients with techniques that blurred the lines between therapy and torment. Records revealed that many of his patients had vanished without a trace, their disappearances shrouded in mystery and fear. The tragic tale of a family that had sought refuge in this house, only to meet a mysterious end, added another layer of horror to the already sinister history. It was said that the spirits of those who had suffered under Dr. Caldwell's care were trapped within the walls of the house, their anguish and sorrow forever echoing through its halls. Determined to rid our home of the malevolent presence, we sought the help of paranormal experts and conducted cleansing rituals to purify the space. For a brief moment, it seemed like peace had returned. The lights remained steady, and the cries ceased. We believed that we had finally taken control of the situation, reclaiming our home from the shadows of the past. However, the respite was short-lived. Just as we began to settle back into a sense of normalcy, the disturbances resumed with a vengeance. The cries returned, more intense and desperate than ever, as if the spirits were growing restless, their sorrow transforming into anger and despair. The painting in the living room, once a beautiful landscape, now appeared to shift and change, the serene scenery giving way to dark, twisted images that mirrored the turmoil within the house. One night, as the family gathered once more to confront the lingering presence, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. The cries reached a fever pitch, and the voice of a woman echoed through the room, her tone filled with anguish and menace. "Don't come near the upstairs," she repeated, her voice now laced with anger. "Leave now, before it's too late." Laura and I stood together, determined to face whatever was tormenting our home. We ascended the staircase once more, the weight of the past pressing down on us with every step. The crying grew louder, guiding us towards the master bedroom, where the painting hung prominently on the wall. As we entered the room, the temperature dropped further, our breath visible in the icy air. The painting had transformed into a nightmarish scene, the once tranquil landscape now engulfed in darkness. The shadowy figure of a child standing by the window, watching us with hollow eyes. The air was thick with sorrow, the presence of the restless spirits palpable. "We need to let them go," Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "They're trapped here, unable to find peace." Determined to help the lost souls, we began to recite prayers and perform the cleansing rituals recommended by the paranormal experts. The room seemed to respond, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the cries softened into whispers of gratitude. The painting returned to its original form, the serene landscape restored as if untouched by the horrors that had unfolded. As we completed the final steps of the ritual, a sense of calm settled over the house. The shadows receded, the lights stabilized, and the cries ceased entirely, replaced by a peaceful silence that filled the room. We knew that we had finally freed the trapped spirits, allowing them to find the peace they had long been denied. In the weeks that followed, the house remained tranquil, the disturbances gone as if they had never existed. We settled back into our lives, grateful for the peace we had reclaimed. The experience had left an indelible mark on our family, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of love and compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind whispers through the trees and the moon casts a soft glow on the quiet streets of Marfa, I catch a faint echo of a child's cry, a lingering reminder of the spirits we had freed and the darkness that once haunted our home. It serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the lengths we go to protect those we love, even in the face of the unknown. Story number 7. The Enigmatic Canvas. The moment we drove past the old Victorian-style house on Pinewood Lane in California, I felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. My wife, Laura, and our 2 children, Emma and Jake, had been searching for the perfect home for months, and this place seemed to check all the boxes. It was spacious, nestled in a quiet neighborhood, and had a charming backyard that Emma and Jake couldn't wait to explore. Little did we know, the house held secrets that would soon turn our lives into a living nightmare. I'm Michael Thompson, and moving into a new home had always been a symbol of fresh beginnings for our family. The house, with its grand facade and intricate woodwork, exuded an air of timeless elegance. The previous owners had left behind most of their belongings, adding a sense of history to the place. As we unpacked and settled in, the house felt like a sanctuary, a perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of our daily lives. The first few weeks were blissful. We spent weekends painting rooms, rearranging furniture, and exploring every nook and cranny of our new abode. But as winter approached, the nights grew longer and colder, and subtle changes began to unsettle us. It started with the lights sometimes turning on and off by themselves, flickering in a way that felt almost deliberate. Laura dismissed it as electrical issues, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, Emma pointed out that the lamp beside her bed had turned on without anyone touching the switch. Jake laughed it off, teasing her about her overactive imagination, but Laura and I exchanged uneasy glances, the unspoken worry deepening between us. Things escalated when we noticed furniture moving subtly. A chair would shift position when no one was sitting in it, or a book would fall off the shelf as if pushed by an unseen hand. The phenomena were unnerving but manageable, until we discovered the old painting in the living room. The painting was an elaborate piece, depicting a serene landscape with rolling hills and a quaint farmhouse under a twilight sky. It had a captivating beauty, but something about it seemed unsettling. One night, as I sat reading in the living room, I glanced up to see the painting slightly altered. The farmhouse in the artwork now had a shadowy figure standing by the door, watching us intently. Startled, I rubbed my eyes and looked again. The figure was gone, leaving the scene peaceful once more. Dismissing it as a trick of the light, I returned to my book. But the next morning, the painting had changed again. This time, the landscape was darker, the colors more muted, and the figure by the farmhouse was back, closer this time, with an expression of anguish. Concerned, I showed the painting to Laura. She suggested we call a professional to understand what was happening. After some research, we found a local feng shui master named Mr. Lee, who had a reputation for dealing with unusual household phenomena. Mr. Lee arrived one chilly Saturday afternoon, his presence calm and reassuring. After a thorough inspection of the house, he requested access to the basement, a place we had always avoided due to its cramped, cluttered nature. "There's a history to this house that you need to be aware of," Mr. Lee began, his voice steady. Before it was a family home, this building served as a mental health facility in the late 1800s. Dr. Samuel Whitaker, a renowned but controversial psychiatrist, resided here. He was known for his extreme treatment methods, often blurring the lines between therapy and torture. Laura shivered, gripping my arm tightly. "What happened to Dr. Whitaker?" Mr. Lee sighed, his eyes distant. "There are rumors, whispers of patients disappearing, strange occurrences within these walls. It is said that a family once took refuge here, fleeing persecution. Tragically, they met a mysterious end, their spirits never finding peace." The air grew colder as Mr. Lee continued. "The energy in this house is tainted by unresolved anguish and suffering. The painting you mentioned is likely a manifestation of those restless spirits, trying to communicate their pain, determined to rid our home of the malevolent presence." We followed Mr. Lee's instructions, incorporating feng shui principles to harmonize the energy within the house. We rearranged furniture, introduced calming elements, and performed cleansing rituals. For a brief moment, it seemed like the disturbances had ceased. The lights remained steady, and the furniture stayed put. We breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing that peace had finally settled over our home. But peace was short-lived. One night, as a heavy snowstorm raged outside, the house seemed to come alive with a vengeance. The lights flickered violently, casting frantic shadows across the rooms. The furniture moved with increasing frequency, and the once serene painting began to warp, the landscape twisting into a nightmarish scene. The shadowy figure in the farmhouse grew larger, its eyes filled with sorrow and rage. I was awakened by the sound of heavy breathing and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Sitting up, I saw the figure from the painting standing at the foot of our bed, his presence suffocating. "Leave," it whispered, the word carrying an unbearable weight. Terrified, I woke Laura, who immediately sensed the disturbance. Together, we rushed downstairs to the living room, where the painting had transformed into a grotesque tableau. The serene landscape was now a battlefield, the farmhouse engulfed in flames, and the shadowy figure loomed over the chaos. Its expression twisted in agony. Desperate to protect my family, I grabbed the painting, hoping to remove the source of the haunting. But as soon as my fingers touched the frame, the room plunged into darkness. The temperature plummeted, and the whispers became screams, filling the house with the collective anguish of the past. We called Mr. Lee again, but he was unavailable. Rumors suggested he had vanished, leaving no trace behind. With no other options, Laura and I decided to confront the spirits ourselves, guided by the remnants of Dr. Whitaker's journal, which we found hidden in the basement. We attempted to communicate with the restless souls. The journal detailed Dr. Whitaker's descent into madness, his obsession with controlling the human mind, and the dark experiments he conducted in the basement. It spoke of a ritual meant to bind the spirits of the afflicted. But something had gone terribly wrong, trapping them in a state of eternal suffering. As we recited the incantations from the journal, the house trembled, the walls groaning under the strain of the unleashed energy. The painting floated in mid-air, the figure now reaching out towards us with elongated limbs. "Release us," it cried, the words echoing through the house like a death knell, summoning every ounce of courage. Laura and I completed the ritual, hoping to free the spirits from their torment. The air shimmered with a spectral light, and the oppressive presence began to dissipate, the shadows retreating into the corners of the room. The painting returned to its original form, the serene landscape restored as if untouched by the horrors that had unfolded. Exhausted but hopeful, we watched as the house settled into a peaceful silence. The disturbances ceased, and the air felt lighter. The weight of the past finally lifted. We had given the spirits the peace they so desperately sought, and in doing so, we reclaimed our home from the clutches of darkness. In the aftermath, the house felt different, not just restored, but alive with a newfound harmony. The winter snow melted, giving way to the vibrant colors of spring, and the family that once plagued the house was now at rest. We continued our lives, forever changed by the ordeal, but grateful for the sanctuary we had reclaimed. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind whispers through the trees and the house is bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, I catch a faint reflection in the mirror, a fleeting image of a sorrowful figure watching us from the shadows. It serves as a haunting reminder of the delicate balance between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of love and compassion to heal even the deepest wounds.